Live. Okay. Checking that I'm live here. I am. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I hope everybody's day is off to a great start. It's a little dreary and rainy where I am, so hopefully this is going to kind of lift us all up. I just want to check that we're working on I wanted to share this to my Facebook group. Let's see how that's working. Oh, yep, we're good. Okay. All the technical things are good. So I see we have a couple here. Oh, Trish. Hello from Park City, Utah. Great to have you here. Thanks for saying hello. So guys, I'm very, very excited about my Facebook Live topic today. We're talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart right now, which is helping moms to feel calm at mealtimes. So if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen probably, I guess it would have been maybe a couple weeks ago, I posted a quote that was all about the importance of smiling at the dinner table. And this is something that, I promote a lot because I'm a big believer that that really sets the tone for the meal. And so I had talked in that post about, faking it before you make it. And, that sometimes maybe you have to paste that smile on your face. Which is true. I do think that sometimes you kind of have to pretend that you're feeling that. But today I really want to just kind of take it a step further and talk about some strategies for actually feeling calm when you get to the table and to actually, enjoy being there. And because this is something I just kind of mentioned that I'm working on myself, I have brought in a special guest to help me. And I definitely know that she is going to really help us feel a little more zen at the table. You can probably hear her there, but before I get to her, I just want to quickly, for those of you who don't know me, hello and welcome. I am Sarah Bester, and I'm a family nutritionist and a picky eating coach, and I help busy moms raise healthy eaters instead of picky eaters. And usually, if you've seen my Facebook Lives before, I tend to be here with more of the kind of tactical picky eating strategies, but today we're going to kind of talk about something a bit different, which is about us mamas. And I'm going to kind of get to why we're talking about that in a minute. So now I want to introduce my guest, and we got to get the technical stuff going here. There she is. This is Amanda. Hi, Amanda.
Hola!
Hola, I'm so happy you're here. So Amanda Weber is a good friend of mine, and she's also a certified instructor and happiness coach. And she's the creator of the Full Life Coaching Program and popular weekly podcast, which I love. And Amanda helps people build a life they love while they love and care for those around them. So I'm going to let Amanda introduce herself a little bit and tell us what she's all about.
Amazing. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. So I am calling in right now from the jungles of Costa Rica, where we're in the middle of rainy season. And so I guess maybe I'll start there with who I am. About 2 months ago, my family and I decided that we needed an adventure. We kind of joke, my husband and I, that we're doing our midlife crisis together. So here we are, testing every aspect of our relationship, including our parenting. So, we're in Costa Rica for probably 6 months to a year. Our youngest daughter, is in school here, and so I'm really trying to take to the next level the things that I teach about with happiness, and that is how much of it is impacted by what's actually outside and around you versus what's going on the inside. And so if I look back about 10 years ago now, maybe even 12, I began what was a really personal journey to try and move from being busy and stressed out to what I now call the full life. And it was really not about, I love to be busy and I love to have lots on the go. And it wasn't so much about not doing all the things I wanted to do, but trying to play with my perception of what was happening and see if I could do all those things but feel better about it. And so that's what trading busy for full and the full life has really become all about. And that's the journey I'm on now, and what I coach, and I speak at workshops, and I do a lot of corporate work teaching people how to get good at stress, because it seems like that was the magical piece of all of that, that if I could get good at stress, all of a sudden, no matter what was happening outside of me, on the inside, I could, for the most part, remain cool and calm. And I guess the only other thing I would say is, because we're talking a lot about family and kids, is that I have 3 kids, 3 life lesson teachers. My oldest boys, I can't even believe, are 23 and 25 years old. And I'm not sure where all that time went, as cliche as that is. But then I had one more in me. So I had a little girl 7 years ago. So I have a 7-year-old too. And so I feel like when we talk today, I've tested a lot of what I've done and seen how it comes out the other end. And then I'm retesting and refining with my younger daughter. So I hope you'll find there's legitimacy to the tools and practices that I share today. I
love how you say that your kids are you call them your little teachers, because that is a mindset shift I've been trying to do a lot lately. It's, in those crazy moments, it's like, okay, what are they trying to teach me? It's got to be something. Right? Now, I should say I discovered Amanda through what I like to call a series of kind of divine coincidences that brought me to her. But I now consider myself a full-fledged groupie of yours, really. I follow, everything she does. And Amanda has really helped me see life through a different lens. So I think she, you just heard her talk a bit about perception. And that has been a really huge shift for me, not only at the dinner table, but just kind of in all areas of my life and parenting. And that perception shift, like you kind of said, it really does help you to become a bit more just happier and calmer in the way that you look at life. And so, through all of that, that's really helped me become a better mom and a better business owner. But obviously, still a work in progress, which is why we're here today. How great is it that Amanda has followed her own advice and she is living the full life over there in Costa Rica? Or what do they say there? They say pura vida? Pura vida?
Pura vida. Pura vida. And what's interesting about that is pura vida means the simple life. And so originally I thought it meant that life would be really simple here. Mm-hmm. But what I've discovered is it actually is simple, but it's not always easy. In some ways my life in Canada was so much easier when I could pick up a phone and call someone when, I had a flat tire or whatever. But here it's definitely simple, not necessarily easy. And so, it's an interesting perspective shift, I guess.
Yeah, such an awesome life experience. And I'm jealous today as it's freezing and raining here. So, okay, so today we are talking about stress at the dinner table. So let's just start by talking about, your biggest challenges. You've parented in the past, and now you're kind of doing it again. What types of challenges have you seen, and do you experience stress at the table? Do you now? Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, and yes, and yes. I was going to joke, I feel like the biggest stresses at the table are sugar and kids who only want to eat carbs.
Right.
When I think logistically, but I think the biggest stress at our table really has almost nothing to do with the food and a lot more to do with, I grew up in a family where we had dinner together. My dad would come home from work. My mom made the meal. My brothers and sisters would be at the table. The 2 dogs would be under the table. It's really, and growing up, it all seemed like it just flowed so naturally. But in this era of busyness that a lot of us seem to be in, where we have so many things on the go, I feel like the most stressful thing at my dinner table is trying to get everybody there, trying to get healthy food on the table, mm-hmm. and then me being able to show up and enjoy that those things are coming together. And it just doesn't always work that way.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot going on for sure. What about being in Costa Rica? Is there different challenges there than maybe you experienced here?
Availability of food is quite a bit different. And so, we're always trying to move toward less processed food and more whole foods, which I know you talk about a lot. And so from that perspective, it's easier in that we don't have access to a lot of processed food. But sometimes you think just because it's not there, it'll be easy to not eat it, which it is, but it's also a little bit harder to prepare with foods that aren't always familiar to us and that kind of thing. So I think as a family, we've been eating much simpler, and there's a bit less focus on what we eat and a bit more focus on finding it from a local farmer, making it, and getting it on the table. So we've sort of shifted the focus a little bit, and kind of enjoying that, because I feel like there's so much stress around getting your kids and yourself to eat healthy food, and which I think is really important, but I think it's equally as important that we enjoy the food and that we don't feel stressed when we're putting the food in our bodies.
Yes. We'll talk, and we're going to talk about that, right, a little bit, about the kind of physiological component. So I just want to put it out to anyone who's watching live, or I mean, even if you're watching the replay, I want to know a bit about, you know, how you're feeling at the dinner table, because I am hearing this quite frequently. So if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed at the dinner table, let us know. Give us a thumbs up or a heart, just to kind of let us know so we can get the tone of what's out there. And of course, if you feel comfortable, we'd love to know what is causing you to feel that way. Is it something that, you know, you're coming to the table with already? Is it something that's happening at the table? Let us know in the comments for sure. So Amanda, I mean, the reason that obviously I wanted to have you on this Facebook Live today was that a lot of the moms I'm talking about, including myself, are dealing with stress at the table, and you know, there's a lot of different reasons for it, obviously. I deal with a lot of moms who have picky eaters, which can cause a ton of stress. Parents are really, really worried about their picky eaters and whether they're eating and how much they're eating and all that good stuff. A lot of the stress, I think, like you were talking about, comes from the burden of preparing meals and, you know, planning meals. And, you know, if you have kids, you're looking at 3 meals a day plus snacks for a family. You're wanting to make sure it's healthy. There's a lot of, I think, stress associated with that. And then, you know, one other thing I wanted to make sure we touch on is the fact that sometimes the stress has absolutely nothing to do with the food or with our kids or any of that. It's that life is busy, right? And that we're coming to the table with all sorts of stuff on our mind, our to-do list running through our head, and maybe there's something that happened at work that we're still thinking about, or there's another issue with our children that we're thinking about. There's just all this stuff going on. And when I you know, kind of list it all out there, it's a miracle that we're actually ever happy at the table. No, I'm just kidding.
I was just feeling that as you were listing all those things, I was thinking I could actually feel myself starting to get worked up.
Yeah. So let's try not to focus on all that. However, I know for myself, like, I am finding meal times really challenging right now. And I don't know if it's the phase of life that I'm in, but, you know, I have a toddler. She's like almost 1.5 years. She's having a lot of trouble communicating what she wants at mealtime. So there's a lot of screaming, like a lot of screaming. I'm often alone for dinner with, you know, my 3 kids, which I find very challenging. And, you know, my other 2 have needs as well. So I'm trying to balance the needs of everybody. I'm trying to eat myself. And so, you know, I have these really good intentions of coming to the table feeling, you know, calm, cool, and collected. And it just isn't happening lately. And I have to be honest that I think I'm also really hard on myself, because this is something that I'm working with parents on, right? And I am coaching them to be calm at the table and how much of a difference that makes in terms of, you know, how their child is going to eat. So, you know, I've got all of that going on. And so, you know, that's a big reason why I wanted to talk about it. So are you seeing this with, you know, the moms that you work with as well?
I am a lot, and I think, you know, one aspect that I think hopefully will bring people comfort is, so in a lot of my corporate workshops, it's very often 80% women that are in the audience. And I will often start out by saying, you know, we're gonna learn to get good at stress today. Let's talk about what causes you the most stress. And so pretty much hands down, I get the same 5 things that cause people stress. And those are work, finances, parenting, health, and what they're going to serve for dinner tonight. Like it literally, I kid you not, it ranks up there with parenting, health, and job stress.
Yeah.
What am I serving for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
And so when I unpack that a little bit deeper, it's so interesting that we're at a time now where there's meal planning online. There's food boxes being delivered to our homes with healthy foods and menu cards in them. There's availability of lots of different whole foods, tons of free education and coaching on, and yet, even though all those things should simplify dinner time and make it less stressful, it almost seems like it's causing more stress because it's just upping the expectations of how a dinner time is going to look.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that if you're feeling stress at the dinner table, to just try and get a breath and acknowledge that it's perfectly normal, that the perfect dinner table where the children show up and the nice conversation is had, we can have that as nice to have, but the reality is it doesn't always look that way. And when it doesn't look that way, we have a choice if we're going to let it make us more stressed out or if we're going to try and shift the way that we see it. And so, as much as I think knowing that you have a choice is really important, but also acknowledging that, mealtime can be stressful.
No, for sure. And that's part of the reason I think why I wanted to do this is that a lot of the messaging in my coaching is around, having that nice dinner table and having nice conversations and all that good stuff. But it doesn't mean it's happening every single night, right? It's okay to strive for something, but then we need to find a way, to deal if it doesn't necessarily work out exactly as we want it to, right? And so it's finding that balance.
Yeah, I think it's finding the balance, and then as you're navigating through it, it's a lot like being in your car. If you go on a trip somewhere and you set your destination in your GPS, or whether you use Google Maps or Waves or whatever, sometimes there's detours along the way, but it doesn't mean that you can't get back on track or find a different way to get there. And I know that might sound overly simple, but sometimes the best thing you can do is say to yourself, in this moment, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
Let's just be curious about how this can roll out versus deciding that it has to be bad and it has to escalate and there has to be disappointment or whatever. Could I just see what there is to see here? And could I just know that I'm doing the best I can?
Right.
As much as that sounds simple, so many of us feel like, it would be so self-indulgent to acknowledge that I'm doing the best I can. But you know what? I believe we're always doing the best we can.
Definitely, for sure. And a great example of this that just popped in my head is the pressure, a lot of moms with picky eaters or with kids put on themselves when they make a meal and they bring it to the table and nobody wants to eat it. And, beating ourselves up about that or getting caught up in kind of that negative, oh my gosh, and letting it stress you out. Well, you know what? You did a great job. You made a meal. You got it on the table. Like, that is something to be proud of. And maybe not everyone's going to eat it. Maybe people are going to complain about it or whatever. But how can we try to just be kind to ourselves in those moments?
Yeah, and maybe this is a good time to kind of jump in and say, with my older kids now, with the as I look at them and their eating habits today, with the benefit of knowing what I did with them when they were younger and where they are now, there were many meals where I came to the table stressed out. I was worried that they were getting enough vegetables, or, that they weren't eating too much fried food was really a big topic of conversation, 15, 20 years ago. Right. Much different than it is today, but it's still around the health of what they're eating. I thought that if I didn't get worked up at the table and show that I was worked up, that heaven forbid they might eat junk food their entire lives.
Right.
But the reality is that the stress I created at the dinner table was much more harmful to them in the long term than the food that they were eating. Because, we develop our taste buds. Foods taste good. Our family introduces food to us. Our friends introduce food to us. Enjoying a meal, chewing it, tasting it, not being stressed out around food, I think is actually a lot more important than we might realize. And so now, I look at my older boys, and I'm away right now. So I called them last night and said, what have you guys been eating while I've been away? And they laughed because they know that I have an expectation of what they're going to eat. Yeah. But you know what? For the most part, they know that half of their plate should be covered with vegetables and the other 2/4 should probably be carbs and meat. They've sort of got a general idea in their head. Mm-hmm. They're following it. When they're not following it, they can self-moderate. They do get there. But the one thing that we still struggle with today is learning how to deal with stress. We don't struggle with the foods. We struggle with how to deal with the stress of life, whether that's to do with food or not. And so I think taking some of the pressure off yourself, you put the healthy food on the table. You'll know this. Don't kids have to try things like 5 or 6 times before their taste buds can decide if they like it?
Oh, it's more like,
is that right?
It's closer to like 30 times sometimes. So,
okay. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So getting it to the table and mom or dad getting to the table feeling good is a way better combination than you being upset and them feeling forced to eat whatever the food is. Right. So it might be just mixing up what it looks like, the expectation a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly kind of where I wanted to go with this, is that we all know that our stress is probably detrimental to ourselves, but I really wanted to focus today on like, how is it impacting our, because anyone watching this, their goal probably is to raise a healthy eater, would be why they're following my page. And I think any mom, that's obviously, part of their goal. But yeah, how is that stress really affecting that goal? Because focusing on that one meal, like you said, it's not necessarily going to impact the big picture, getting them to eat that certain food in that one meal. So it's how can we, have the big long-term perspective and look at this as kind of a long-term goal. And so I'd like you to talk a bit more about that, because you are an expert in stress. This is something that you've studied a lot. So
and personally experienced a lot.
Yes, for sure. So tell us a little bit more about how our stress can impact, kind of that goal of having meal times be positive and enjoyable. Because that is really what I promote a lot in my coaching, is that, we want kids to come to the table and really enjoy being there, and it to be a pleasurable place that they look forward to coming. So how is our stress, affecting that, our ability to do that?
Yeah, this is good. This is actually a great place to have this conversation, because I think there's 2 aspects to how stress impacts our ability, or a kid's ability to eat food and enjoy food. There's a physiological perspective, and there is an emotional component. So physiologically, when we engage the stress response in our body, which is the fight-flight response, when that gets engaged in our body, there's like a cascade, if you will, of physiological changes that happen in the body. Our heart starts to beat faster, our blood pressure increases, a number of different things. But what I want to focus on is anything that the body does that doesn't keep you alive in a moment of fight or flight is the body says it takes too much energy. We're just going to slow that down, and we'll get back to it when we feel safe and secure again. Well, two of those things are our immune system and our digestive system. And so when we're stressed out, or when we create an environment where our kids are stressed out, their tummies, your stomach, stops digesting food. And that's huge, right? Huge. At the dinner table.
Huge.
So from a physiological perspective, the digestion's slowing down. So our tummy might be, feeling knots, and many people will say that they recognize these feelings. They just didn't realize that it was the stress that was creating them. Mm-hmm. The other aspect, which is a bit more emotional, is that when we engage the fight-flight response, our body only gives us access to emotions or feelings that would keep us alive if there was a threat outside of us. So these are things like resistance to change, because in a scary situation, you want to do what you know is going to work and keep you safe, right? You don't want to be creative about,
right.
Well, let's say, for example, trying foods that maybe you're not, right. seem kind of different.
Right.
It also keeps, as a mom, it keeps us locked in those emotions like worry. I'm worried that my kids are never going to be good eaters. Fear. I'm afraid if they don't eat well, they're going to get sick. Mm-hmm. Frustration. I prepared this beautiful meal and now nobody wants to eat it. So the stress response keeps us locked into those emotions.
That's so interesting.
Opposed to, I know, and it's interesting, and yet when I describe that to people, they say, oh, well, this makes so much sense. Totally. Because the more frustrated I am, the more frustrated I seem to be. Mm-hmm. And then in their heads, they'll say, I shouldn't be frustrated. I should be happy. I'm going to pretend to be happy. Mm-hmm. Unless you disengage the stress response, your body will not really allow you to feel happy. So you can probably fake it short term, but it becomes really hard. So if we can disengage the stress response, either before we even show up at the table or when things are starting to ramp up at the table, then all of a sudden we get access to a totally different bucket of emotions. Creativity, openness to try new things, feelings of, I can do this. I'm not afraid to try. It will be okay if they don't eat the green beans today. Mm-hmm. They have 29 more tries before we decide if they really like them. Right? And so it's if you let your stress, I use emotions as how I navigate the stress response. If I'm feeling worried, frustrated, short-fused, judgy, guilty, I know that I've engaged my stress response. If I feel this could be good, mm-hmm. let's see what's going to happen today. Yep. I'm open to seeing what might happen. Then I know that I have disengaged the stress response. So it's a great way to navigate mm-hmm. and not show up at the table in a stress state.
It's so true. I mean, yeah, as you say that, I can picture, different meals where the exact same thing is happening, but how I handle it is completely different, right? It's so true that when you have that stress response going, like it's just the negative thoughts and negative reactions, things just don't roll off your back like they do when you're feeling a bit more calm, right? So that's just, it's so, I think so helpful to hear that, to understand the importance of kind of managing that before you get to the table, because once things are happening, it's really, really hard probably to stop that train from rolling, right?
Well, it is, because it's a survival mechanism, right? And our will and our kids' wills to survive is probably arguably stronger than any other will that we have, right?
Right.
And so when the stress response gets engaged, the body, until it feels that it's safe and okay to disengage it will keep us locked in there.
Yeah.
So we're not digesting our food and we're not feeling good about it.
Yeah.
And so if you can even say to yourself, this is so interesting. This is what Sarah and Amanda talked about. It's not that I'm a bad mom or I have picky eater. Well, you might have picky eaters. I know I did. It's not that I'm a bad mom. It's not that I can't, prepare a good meal. It's not that whatever. It's just that I've engaged the stress response, and right now my body isn't allowing me to feel the way I want to feel.
Yeah.
That's all this is.
Yeah.
That's all this is.
Yeah.
So let's see what we can do to disengage it, which we're gonna share some tips with that.
We are.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah. So we've just established, okay, we need to disengage that stress response prior to coming to the table. We need to find ways to just genuinely feel that calm. I just was laughing when you were talking about, we can fake it, which I try to do all the time, but chances are our kids are probably picking up on that, right? It's not easy to pretend you're happy. You can paste that smile on your face, but they can often see right through it. So we've established that we need to do something about this. So I think let's start off by, we've touched on this a little bit, but how can moms out there really tell that they're feeling that stress and that overwhelm before they're getting to the table? What kind of signs could they look for?
Yeah, so the most important thing is you have to create a check-in with yourself. So for me, before dinner goes on the table, I literally in real time, I take a moment to check in and say, Amanda, how are you feeling right now? And I just label how I'm feeling. I'm feeling worried because things didn't go very well at work today, and I'm not really sure how that's going to impact whatever going forward. I'm feeling guilty. I was out late last night, and then I got up tired this morning, and I didn't react with my kids the way I wanted. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling frustrated. I've got this meal all ready to go, and now everybody's decided that they're not coming in for dinner or they're doing something else. So just check in and see how you're feeling. If you're feeling anything that feels like a stress emotion, which is worry, guilt, frustration, anger, judgmental, any of those, then that's your cue. Oh, I've got some level of the stress response engaged in my body, and I need to take some deep breaths, which is the easiest thing to do because it's a tool that you have right with you. And so that's how you sort of recognize, do that check-in. So step one is to do a little check-in and say, how am I feeling right now? Label yourself with an emotion for how you're feeling. Step one.
Yeah. I love that check-in idea because I find for myself, it's often such a crazy time of the day that I often am not even taking a second to think before I, kind of get everybody to the table. So I think for me, that's going to be really helpful in just transitioning. And even if I have to lock myself in the bathroom to do that for a couple minutes, then maybe that's what I have to do, right? So,
well, you and I we were just talking earlier too, right? That sometimes for me, I open the refrigerator door because it's nice and cool, and I just take some long, slow, deep breaths, and everybody thinks I'm busy preparing something, and all I'm doing is I'm just taking some breaths, saying, Amanda, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now? And then I close the fridge door, and I know exactly how I'm feeling.
So good. So good. I love it. Okay, so we've checked in with ourselves. We recognize that maybe we're feeling, a little less than calm. So what are some simple strategies that moms can do that's going to take just a couple minutes to really prepare them to come to the table?
Sure. So let's look at proactive and reactive. So proactive would be what you're going to do before you show up at the table. So you might still be in the kitchen preparing the food. Maybe you've got littles that are sitting at the table already and you've offered them, something to keep them busy while you're getting the food to the table, whatever the situation. Proactively, when you check in and you notice that you're somewhat stressed, you can just simply take some long, slow, deep breaths. And the easiest way to do this, for me, I find when I'm feeling stressed, people always say just breathe, like take a breath in, but I actually find it's better to exhale first. Yeah. So exhale out, and then a nice long inhale in through the nose is great if that's available to you. Hold for a moment and exhale out. So some people call this 16 seconds to bliss. Some people call it box breathing. You breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4. And it takes about 15 seconds to do that. So if you did that 4 times, you would begin to tell your body that it's perfectly safe to turn the stress response off. Because the body needs you to cue it and tell it that it's okay to turn the stress response off. And a long, slow, deep breath is a cue to the brain to say it's okay to slow down.
Right.
So it's like your bridge between stress and de-stress is that breath.
You're not chasing that tiger anymore, right?
That's right. The tiger's gone. It's okay to, and that will give you then access to compassion and kindness and I'm doing the best I can and wow, I'm really rocking it today. Yeah. Or, it'll give you that opportunity to show up for yourself. And then from there, you can show up for everybody else. So it always starts with you. It always has to start with you.
And that's one thing I with the breathing that I really have taken from you is the exhale. And when I'm feeling kind of like, sometimes the breathing in can actually like make me feel a bit more stressed or whatever, but it's that exhale that really relaxes me. Like I can let that exhale go for a really long time and that just really disengages that stress for me for sure.
Well, and the interesting thing is when you let go of your breath, it's almost like in your mind, you're letting go of things that aren't serving you. You're letting go of your carbon dioxide because you don't need it anymore. You might be letting go of the stress you're holding because you don't need it anymore.
Right.
And once you let go, the body will naturally then say, okay, now we're ready to take something back in. Now we're ready for a breath in. And so it's a really beautiful flow of exhaling out what you don't need. And then the body says, great, now I'm ready to receive. And it's just that nice kind of flow.
Love it. Any other tips or strategies?
So one thing, so when you're actually at the table, the research shows that on average we taste the first bite of our food, maybe the second bite of our food, and then we are so in our heads with the busyness of what's happening inside us and around us that we actually don't taste our food.
I don't think I taste my entire meals these days. I swear.
No. But you know what? When we don't taste our food, we stop chewing our food. When we stop chewing our food, we start swallowing it not properly chewed, and then we don't get all the vitamins from it. And chewing, swallowing quickly is something we do when we're in a stress state. And so one thing I love to do at the table is you could do this with littles. You could just say, for our first bite of food, let's taste it, and everybody describe what they taste. And so you're taking the focus away from the chaos and really onto the food. And, it's okay if they say, it tasted yucky.
Right.
Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And then somebody else will say it tasted chewy or, it tasted spicy.
Yeah.
But at least then you're kind of enjoying talking about the food and not all the other stuff. And so if we taste the first bite and describe it, and then the second bite, let's try and smile while we're taking the second bite. And again, when you smile, you release those endorphins in your body that say, this is good. I'm having an enjoyable time, right? Like just the muscles in your face smiling start to create that relaxation response. And so even just, let's say the first 2 bites go well and then chaos entails, maybe that's 2 steps better than the day before.
Yeah,
or maybe the rest of the meal. Who knows? Maybe the rest of the meal can turn out great.
Well, and this really even speaks to a whole other concept of just the mindful eating in general and how that's something that I think a lot of people are struggling with these days. And there's actually a book for people watching if they're interested in more on this topic. It's called French Kids Eat Everything. I don't know if you've heard of it, Amanda, but
so good.
Have you read it? Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that she focuses on a lot is, with her kids is, really savoring every bite. And instead of looking at food as, we just got to kind of get it in and be done, it's how can we really taste the food and mindfully understand, our appetite and listening to our appetite. And so those tips that you gave there, I think that's a really great foray into that topic as well, which is something that I think so many kids could benefit from.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of schools where they're trying to get kids to eat in silence to connect more with their food. But the challenge is that a lot of kids are stressed, and so eating in silence feels more like a punishment than something that would be fun.
Yeah.
And yet, if we can smile and we get to describe how it tastes, just being able to express ourselves in that way naturally disengages the stress response. And so these are all ways to, that bridge of stress makes us feel all those emotions, worry, guilt, anger, frustration, not open to tasting or trying things. If we can disengage that stress response and access those other emotions like kindness and compassion and openness and all those things, it's like mealtime becomes a game of you do your job to take some deep breaths and keep that stress response disengaged, and then allow yourself to just let the meal take place.
Yeah.
Rather than feeling like it's your responsibility to make it happen a certain way.
For sure.
And, easier said than done. I totally understand.
Yeah, exactly.
But remember that Amanda said that her older boys eat vegetables and are reasonably healthy.
Right.
So even though it might not,
even though she was stressed at dinner every night.
They actually say to me now, they're like, Mom, we were like your lab rats for life. Like you tested everything on us.
Right.
And now my daughter, Brooke, they're like, she gets such good quality parenting. That's why she's in the middle of the jungle right now.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like what I always say to parents is like, we don't know what we don't know. And, the fact anybody watching this, I mean, that's great. Now these are some strategies that even myself, I took away some things from this conversation in terms of things that I can now do moving forward. And so, each step that we can take is a step in the right direction. That's often what I say to parents. And actually, I wanted to jump in with my own tip as well. It just kind of got me thinking of something that I recommend to families because I talk a lot about making sure that the table is an enjoyable place. And so one thing that I often talk about is starting the table or starting dinner with some sort of kind of tradition, whether it be a prayer or whether it be, a question that everyone kind of goes around the table and answers. And now that I'm thinking about it, I bring it up from the perspective of making the table fun, but now I'm also seeing that might be a nice way to transition everybody from their busy day,
totally.
for the meal to be kind of a bit more of a calm place or an enjoyable place and kind of get that stress out of our bodies in a connective way.
Yeah, you just actually reminded me of two little things. One is that I never come to the table feeling worked up. If I'm worked up, there's been times where I've actually said to everybody, if this is available for you, and if you have little kids or you're home single parenting, it may not, but I'll say, if you guys are hungry, you guys go ahead and start. I'm just going to go and take a few breaths, and then I'll come back to join you. Mm-hmm. And I think where possible, it's important to say it's okay for me to go and take care of myself first, mm-hmm. and then come back. And the other thing was that we have a rule at our table that we don't have adversarial conversation. Mm. Like, we don't debate politics. We don't bring up topics where we're judging, that kind of stuff, because those naturally engage the stress response. Mm-hmm. And if you have sensitive people at the table, it can really impact them. And so just being a little bit mindful of the conversations that we have at the table, mm-hmm. I think can be really helpful, that once things start to go well, that we keep them on that positive track. For sure. But then after dinner, all the political conversations can happen.
Well, I try to have a rule, no whining at the dinner table, but it doesn't seem to be working these days. Work in progress. Anyways, well, those are,
always.
I think some really, really good strategies. And I think that I know for myself, I love the idea of trying not to come to the table until I really made an effort to kind of get myself to a better place. So that's going to be my homework. Anything else you want to add? Like, I think these are really great exercises because they're very simple. Oh, you're frozen on me for some reason.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay. Even though she's frozen. Sorry, guys. You're going to not want to look back at that expression. Yeah, like I like these because they're very, very simple. And obviously, dealing with stress and overwhelm is something that is a bigger picture thing that maybe us as moms have to work on. But is there anything else you want to add in terms of this conversation?
I think I'd just like to say that sometimes it feels like everything is happening to you and that your kids aren't listening and you're getting upset and they're not picking up on it and stopping doing whatever they're doing. Kids really do pick up on how we're feeling. They just don't always know how to navigate it or help with it. And so even when it doesn't feel like they get it, they're watching and they get it. And if you're just trying your best, which I know people are always trying their best, that's enough. On the worst days, that's absolutely enough. And just incrementally trying to get better each moment is really how we show up for ourselves and we show up for the people that we love. And that's the most important thing.
Oh, that's so great. And I mean, to add to that from a picky eating perspective, I mean, I think we all just need to remind ourselves that feeding our kids or parenting in general, it's all such a big picture thing, and that one dinner is not going to make or break the big picture. And so that's something that I do try to remind myself of in those moments where chaos is happening at the table and nobody's eating, and which is a lot lately. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Amanda. I have absolutely loved this conversation. I think that a lot of moms out there watching are going to find it really, really, really helpful. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your Costa Rican day.
You're welcome. It's a nice distraction.
Yeah. I think that it's really, really nice to tackle these topics. I mean, the picky eating thing is obviously really, really important, but I know that a lot of the moms that I'm working with, there's just so much going on in their lives. And I think talking about these kind of tougher aspects of parenthood is just helpful for us to know that we're kind of all in this together. So I think that we need to do this again.
Okay, let's do it again.
Let's do it again for sure. So, Amanda, where can people find you? Because if there's anybody watching who really, really is resonating with some of these topics, Amanda is such a wealth of information. So where can people find you? What's the best place for people to start?
Sure. So I have a website. It is amandajweber.com. And from there, you can read my blog, which right now I'm doing jungle journals. So I'm kind of finding things that are happening here and unpacking them for greater depth of wisdom, I guess, in life. And that's all around parenting and just my own personal journey. My podcast, links to my podcast there where I cover all these topics. And I think actually the very first episode of my podcast, I talked about this idea of buckets of emotions. So you could go there and listen to that all over again if you wanted. I'm really into Instagram right now, doing stories and posting pictures of things that are happening. So you can find me on Instagram at Amanda Meditates. And I do meditate, but I still have crazy days like everybody else, so I try to keep it pretty real there. I'm on Facebook, as you'll see the link here. And I have a YouTube channel as well called Amanda Weber. It's happiness coach, I believe, but you'll see my picture if you just search on me. And yeah, lots and lots of free tools. And I'm saying this today, it could change overnight. I answer every single email I get. So please reach out with your challenges and stuff. I love to engage with people. So take advantage of that for free coaching tips.
Yeah, you have to follow her on Instagram because she has a lot of fun stories in Costa Rica. Like she had an alligator in her pool last week.
That was awesome.
The kinds of stresses that, not everybody is dealing with.
Yeah, and a scorpion. We had a scorpion on Wednesday. That was my biggest fear here was
gosh.
a scorpion, and one came to visit me, and I opened the front door to shoo it out, and there was a 100-pound dog on my front doorstep, and we don't have a dog.
Oh my goodness. It's like
he just came to visit.
Craziness. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will chat soon. And thanks everybody for tuning in, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the replay. Definitely let us know if you give some of these strategies a try and how it's working for you. We would love to hear it. So thanks, and have an awesome day.
Bye.
Bye.